Everyone. Today is Thursday, December 11th, and we will now call the Audit Committee meeting to order. Mr. Wilburn, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Representing Educational District 1, we have Ms. Katie Howard.
Present.
Representing Educational District 2 and Chair of the Audit Committee, we have Ms. Loretta Balden.
Present.
Representing Educational District Education District 6, we have Mr. Tolton Pace.
Present.
Also present, we have Ms. Patrina Bloodworth, the Executive Director of Internal Audit, Mr. Brian Hawkins and Earl Fagan, and our General Counsel, Madam Nina Gupta. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. I will now entertain a motion to approve the agenda for the December 11th, 2025 Audit Committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And because I was in such a hurry to get there, I skipped the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. So I will now ask for a motion to approve the October 9th, 2025 Audit Committee meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
It has been approved by Board Member Tolton Pace, seconded by Board Member Howard. Is all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. A little rusty today, huh? So we will now, welcome. Come on in. We will now move to our discussion items, and please note that all documents are located within our Assembly platform. Just in case y'all aren't aware, there is a new website, so if you clicked and it didn't show up, just give it another click, wait a couple of minutes, and it should pop up for you. I will turn it over to Patrina Bloodworth, our Executive Director of Internal Audit, to take us through today's agenda.
Thank you, Loretta. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? Thank you so much. Thank you for your time today. And here's our agenda for today. We'll discuss our department financials. Then we'll go through a status update of our school year 2025 and 2026 audit projects. We'll have a presentation from our contractors, Plant Moran, to discuss the terminations audit, as well as CRI advisors to discuss the miscellaneous cash activity account funds audit. We'll move into some ethics point hotline statistics, and then we'll take questions and comments. All right, moving into our financial update. First is our overall budget to actual. You can see our budget's a little over $1 million for this fiscal 2026 year. The red is our first quarter expenses that were around just over $59,000, or about 6% of our budget. The gray is Q2 expenses, about $69,000. And there's a little sliver of gray in there that's basically invisible. It's encumbrances that were $800. So it's super small there. And then the black is the balance of our budget, which is $880,178.98. Moving into our more detailed budget to actual, you'll see all of our detailed line items of our budget. We did have a hiring freeze on October 15th of 2025, so we're still a two-person team, and so there's not been any movement, not much movement as far as spending for staff as well as contractors. So the professional, technical, and services line, there's been no movement there since the last audit committee meeting. However, we will have some additional expenses related to professional services for Plant Moran's additional work in the terminations audit. Any questions about the budget?
No questions.
All right. Moving on to the status of our school year audits. So before I get into the details of our audits, I want to talk a little bit about our approach to the process, our audit process. So we start out at the beginning of the year doing a risk assessment, and that involves speaking with key leadership, superintendent, deputy superintendents, all the chiefs, and talking about what are those high risk, high priority areas. And since I'm fairly new back with the district and starting in August, I've also taken that opportunity to just, it was a great opportunity to meet the new leadership. We've had lots of changes, lots of movement. And so it was good to have that fresh perspective. And so we pull those high-risk areas, as well as any published white papers or reporting on general trending topics across all industries. And we kind of combine those, and that process is what drives the creation of the audit plan. And so once we have our proposed audit plan, that is approved by the audit committee. Once approved, we start our process, which involves announcing the audit to leadership. We start out with an entrance conference with key leadership to discuss objectives, scope, things like logistics, as well as access. Then we move into a planning phase where we're conducting a lot of research, as well as, what are the district's policies and procedures in this area? Are there any laws and regulations that apply to this area? And then are there any industry best practices? And so we take all of that into consideration to come up with a work program for the audit. And once that's approved, we start our field work phase, which involves selecting samples and then testing those sample items. Once testing is done, we move into a reporting phase, which is our exit conference with leadership, management personnel to talk about what issues were discovered. And typically, management is pretty much, we try to keep management in the loop going as we go through the process, so issues are, don't come as a surprise. And by the time we get to the exit meeting, typically all of the issues are known. It's just the nice formal wrap-up process. And then we draft recommendations, send a draft report, send recommendations for management to review and provide their corrective action plans. Throughout this whole process, planning, fieldwork, reporting, work papers are being reviewed. Lots of levels of review of everything. And then once we have management's corrective action plans and we are all in agreement that those plans address the risk appropriately, we issue the final report, which gets distributed to the superintendent, the deputies, as well as all of leadership for the management involved in the process, and then as well as the audit committee and our community advisors. And then lastly, that gets posted to the website.
Thank you for running through that process. Quick warning, you're probably going to do it again at the next audit committee meeting because you will have some new committee members from the board.
Yes.
But I appreciate you taking the time to walk us through that process as well as how you have walked into APS.
Thank you.
I do have a question, if this is an appropriate time. So given the fact that we did have a pause, we really had to pause the work. We did approve this plan with the anticipation that the work was starting this quarter. So I want to manage everyone's expectations in understanding that should we anticipate that the project list that we currently have is going to be the final project list, given that we have not hired, right, and we haven't solidified that. So I just want to manage expectations there. And then I also want to put in the parking lot the miscellaneous cash activity account funds audit. I want to question whether or not it makes sense to do that audit next year, given the fact that the time period we will probably audit will not have had the remediations and the conversations that we're looking to have. And I think that's what we keep seeing, and I know I'm kind of jumping the gun with this audit, is because of its frequency and because of the high turnover. It's hard for us to solve for that. Like, we keep seeing a lot of repeats because we're auditing a time period before we did the remediation. So I'm going to put that in the parking lot for future consideration in terms of how do we make sure, because this is not an aha. We're not doing this with the intent to point fingers or shame anyone. We're doing it because we want to mitigate risk. And in order to do that, we want people to be trained. We want people to know. And so I don't want folks to think that we're coming to get them. I want them to think that we're here to support them. We're here to train them and to give them the resources that they need. So when we do this audit again, that we can actually see some impact in the work that you've done. So sorry I jumped the gun on that. Any other questions or comments around the audit plan status update? Excellent.
Well, thank you, and those all great points. And we will revisit that when time, and agree that we should definitely allow enough time for things to operate properly. You know, you implement plans, they don't always go as planned sometimes. You need a little time to work out the kinks, and then you go in and retest the process. And so we like to allow ample time for that. So,
Looking at my community experts over there, anything to add in this space in terms of considerations?
I'll probably reserve my comments on that specific audit once we get into it in this context. But I don't disagree with what you guys are saying. I just have some additional context to share, but it makes more sense once we get into the audit.
all
Does that
right.
make sense?
Sounds good. So since the last audit committee meeting, we've completed the miscellaneous cash activity funds and the terminations. And then, as Aretta just pointed out, because we have had a hiring freeze, we don't have a team of auditors. We have not started our 2026 audit projects as of yet. We've been focused on closing out the open 2025 projects, as well as managing ethics points complaints. And now I will move into the terminations audit. So this one was performed by Plant Moran. Thank you. I would like to take time to thank Human Resources, as well as Accounting Services and the IT department for all of your help and support and patience in going through this process. We've had, changes over in personnel, so thank you for your assistance. I will turn it over to Plant Moran for their presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Bloodworth. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Am I able to share screen, or shall I say next slide for the presentation deck walkthrough?
You can just say next slide and we will move it along. Do you
Okay,
have that
Thank you.
presentation pulled up, Michael? Because it's going to be different than this. This is just a title slide. We need the terminations. There we go. Okay, we're pulled up.
Okay, I cannot see it on my screen, but that's okay. I do have a copy of it in front of me. I'll just name the slides that I'm on, and perhaps Mr. Wilburn can follow along as I name the slides. Is that okay? Oh, now I see it. Okay.
Excellent, excellent.
Okay, thank you very much for allowing Plant Moran to present the findings of the terminations internal audit. I believe I know everybody there. It's hard to see on the tiny screen, but for those that may not be familiar, I'm Matthew Bowden. I'm the engagement partner for this internal audit. Why don't we go to slide 2? All right. So overall, we're here to present a summary of our terminations internal audit report. As you may be expecting, we do organize this a certain way. Summary of the objective of this internal audit is to evaluate the district's policies, procedures, practices for the processing of terminations throughout the district, with the focus on identifying internal controls and internal control gaps so that we can offer recommendations and advisory on filling those gaps. Specific areas of focus for this internal audit are the processing of employee terminations, badge access deactivations, and the management of overall Active Directory and deactivation for terminated employees within that. Overall, some themes of our assessment. Overall, there was some procedure documentation, limited to start, but certainly some improvements that we saw throughout the course of our internal audit. There are some system limitations here for the subject audit, and there are some communication channel improvements that we've communicated in our report. Overall, 2 findings that are of moderate priority and 2 non-internal control deficiency opportunities for improvement that I'll walk you through here in a moment. Go to the next slide, please. Just a quick summary of the objectives and scope. So we're looking to evaluate the internal controls either in place in an official capacity during the 2023-2024 school year, as well as identify internal controls that may be in place, albeit not documented, as well as those gaps as mentioned earlier. To do so, we would evaluate the policies, procedures, practices used by district personnel related to the completeness, accuracy, and timeliness of employee termination processing. In order to do this, we did perform some sample-based testing of employee termination documentation, as we are inquiry and primarily evidence-based in our approach. Overall, we're looking to assess the timeliness of system and physical access removal for terminated employees, because that is the primary area of risk concentration here in the subject internal audit. And lastly, providing a listing of internal controls, gaps, and recommendations. Go to the next slide, please. So summarizing with the themes here, procedure documentation, process improvements, system limitations, and improving communication channels. We did see that there were some termination standard operating procedures that were included within the talent management standard operating procedure manual. These are high-level informational processes for entering a termination in the GHR system. We would like to note that the talent management team did develop a more comprehensive SOP specifically addressing terminations as of the 2024 to 2025 school year. This is very encouraging to see and demonstrates a fantastic commitment to continuous improvement, operational excellence, and risk management. Overall, we do have some recommendations on strengthening these standard operating procedures, which we'll talk about here in a moment when we go through our opportunities. Those system limitations, right? So the district has had to implement manual processes to work around some specific system limitations. The Linnell badging system does not integrate with GHR to automate badge access deactivation. The talent management function has relied on spreadsheets and other manual tracking to track these terminations as they occur. This may result in entry delay or delay in approval of a termination action in GHR in order to avoid issues and challenges with processing periodic payroll. We're also made aware of some limitations within the Active Directory badge access provisioning system. Some of these did require some manual intervention if there is a system change applied or a change that recognizes over 1,000 record changes. Overall communication channels, we did note that departments and schools did not always communicate terminations to the talent management team on or before the last day of work for the subject employee, delaying when the team could begin to process that termination action. There were compensating controls, such as roster and payroll reviews in place to identify instances where terminations had not been reported. So it's good to see that there are detective controls there. Additionally, during our testing, we did note that if a voluntary termination was not processed within the Lawson employee self-service portal, or if a termination was involuntary, the safety and security team did rely on phone communication or email to notify the termination team to disable that badge access. Because this is a human-driven process, right? There are inherent risks and limitations there when relying on that type of communication to notify the talent management team of these terminations, right? So, any questions on our summary level themes?
I just have a quick question looking into the future. Patrina, around system limitations. Is this new system that we are building going to help with that?
We expect the new system to correct not only this, but as well as other issues that we've seen in the past, including the upcoming school audits.
This is why the audit committee was such a fan of that ERP. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can continue to address the specific findings.
Okay, I'm sorry, I
unless
got
there are other
excited.
questions.
I do have a question.
We do have a question, Earl.
I guess I'm just trying to understand, if someone can help me understand, like, what's the scale of this issue? So, I understand you tested 25 termination actions. I guess I'm trying to understand, how many terminations do we have in a year? And is it significant enough that this is where we need to be spending our time?
That's a good question.
So I don't have the specific population figures in front of me. This is something that I can certainly take as a to-do and get that back to the committee through Ms. Bloodworth. But in terms of the prioritization, I'd certainly like to offer that anytime we're talking about a process where we're going to deprovision access from one or more of our systems for a terminated employee, including software applications and Active Directory, which would be the means through which to access that software application. It does merit consideration and time just to make sure we do have good, solid controls in the process, just because of the inherent risk. Anytime you have an unauthorized user having access to district information systems, it does certainly pose a certain level of data security risk that merits consideration.
Got it. And I 100% agree with that. I guess when I sit back and I first read this report, I think of a few things. Like, the risk I think of is there a data breach risk? Is there a security risk as far as safety to our students and to our employees, as far as building access? And is there a significant financial loss or risk of significant financial loss? So those are the three that come to mind. So I sit back and I read this, and please don't take this the wrong way. It's like, well, why should I care? Are there other things that we need to look at? The other thing I think would be important to understand in this report is what level of terminations and where you're seeing trends at different levels from maintenance to executive. Where are you seeing the misses to see if there are some that are of greater risk than others?
Okay. Yeah, for that, I don't have the specific employee levels or statistics in front of me for our testing samples. Would be happy to revisit those in our working papers and circle back if that is okay.
Okay, and I believe we have an answer regarding the size of the pool.
Can you guys hear me? Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Hi, my name is Ashley Freeman, Executive Director of Employee Services. At the time of the audit, I served as the Director in Talent Management that helped kind of pull the findings together. And so to answer the question about scale, for the sampling for the audit, there were 25 that were sampled. Of the 25, I think 2 had the errors, and we'll get into those details later. For the scale question, we processed over 2,000 separations last year, so that's the number that we're dealing with. And to the point, we'll get into our response that will talk to some of the remedies that we have in place. But just standardly speaking, we have several stop gaps in our talent calendar that allows us to check for anything that may slip through the cracks. So almost our own internal audit process to also add to what we'll go over in just a minute with our findings.
And can you speak to the levels of that 2,000? I would say that it was from across various levels from
Yes, so that slightly over 2,000, I want to say like 2,136-ish is kind of in my head, but I know around 2,100. That encaptured resignations, retirements, also involuntary separations. That was our entire number of separations from last year. All levels, yes, comprehensive of all levels.
See, that's important to know because I think what you have the ability to do is then map the risk against the level.
Absolutely.
I'm less worried about a custodial engineer getting access to privileged and confidential data than I am an executive, at Atlanta Public Schools. So I think it'd be great to do that sort of mapping and then determine where you spend your time in follow-up and monitoring going forward.
Yep, and to those points, and the 2 findings that I know on the HR side, part of our remedy was to make a specific separation report that identified those levels with position title, and we have the system automatically sending those updates to the appropriate departments to mitigate for that.
So the only thing I'd add to that is, based on the numbers, it seems like mathematically that's a daily occurrence,
Yes.
which would support a very frequent process.
Absolutely.
So, it is a little interesting that if the process does break down to where, we're doing the DOL compliance stuff, but then we don't turn to do the systematic stuff all in one process, my mind says, well, where's that breaking down? Is that just one person who has multiple hats and they can't complete that process for the day or for the week, or you know what I mean?
I would say the source of our dysfunction is the different systems not communicating with each other. And so to your question about, taking it to scale and what that could look like, some of those triggers we put in place have been making the systems that we do some automated functions and notifications, even though it may not be to another system. So for example, the example we just talked about, right, around instead of the IT and safety and security teams just getting a blanket separation report, they get a specific separation report that includes title that is in capturing all separations, not just ones where employees may voluntarily go in. Until we get Oracle rolling in January of 2027, that's our making it work until we get to big system rollout.
Okay, well, question for the audit team. Part of the procedures, did you guys actually, for the sample of 25, actually look to see that those 25 were deactivated, even though it didn't say the timing of it? I wasn't clear in terms of were they actually deactivated? Like, did we take that all the way through, And then second part to that question is, did we check payroll? You know, did we take it all the way to payroll to see what the supposed termination date was versus the last date of compensation in payroll?
Yes to both. Confirmed removal in requisite systems. To the first specific item, we did assess the timeliness of the termination action. That actually, if we go to our next slide, please. Our first finding was around the inability to get reliable evidence that demonstrated the specific timing of that termination. So the IT department was not able to provide us with an Active Directory report that showed the specific date of termination and whether and to what extent it happened on or before the date of termination itself. Those audit logs were not retained. Our recommendation here is to implement a process to retain the evidence of Active Directory access deactivation and establish an independent management peer review type process to confirm that those terminations were timely processed.
Okay, so there wasn't a log, but did we, in the audit procedures, take it a step further to see if that person was active in the Active Directory or did have an active badge?
Correct. We did take it through to that step, and we were able to obtain a report. And this was some of the additional information that Ms. Bloodworth alluded to earlier with the budget discussion. We obtained an additional report after our initial pass of the audit that did demonstrate employees were terminated in Active Directory.
You should add that to the report because it reads as though you sort of hit the wall and weren't able to substantiate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll clarify the report that that this was the issue of timeliness. Any other questions?
I think we're good. You can keep moving.
Okay, thank you. Finding number 2, badge access for all employees was deactivated at the time, for all selected employees, excuse me, was deactivated at the time of testing. Oh, I'm sorry, I was speaking to number 2. This was the timeliness issue. So we did cover both of these items with that discussion. My apologies. We can move to the opportunities and best practices if there are no questions on either of these. Okay. For the 2 opportunities, which, as summarized earlier, do not represent internal control gaps, rather opportunities to implement these best practices. First one around the termination standard operating procedures. We recommend that these are updated to include procedures for oversight and monitoring processes performed by the administration to verify the completeness and timeliness of processing terminations within GHR. So again, putting what we had just talked about in terms of audit log retention and then periodic self-review, putting that into procedural level documentation, which would include timeframes for entering a termination into GHR upon notification, specific timeliness in terms of acceptable ranges, right? The termination must be processed within X number of days or in certain circumstances, hours. And the situations that would necessitate any sort of a delay in entry, just so we have that as kind of a matter of procedure. Overall, also looking to delineate responsibilities for processing terminations and reports for other district departments for review. Any questions on opportunity number 1?
No, sir.
Okay. Item number 2, termination review procedures, strengthening those to support the accuracy and document retention. During testing, we did note an isolated instance where the separation email could not be provided. We did request this item as evidence that the official separation letter and the Georgia Department of Labor separation notice were sent to the employee. We identified another instance where the last day of employment was misstated on the Georgia Department of Labor separation notice. So as a result, we do recommend that administration implement a sample-based peer review process for employee termination files. Under this process, a records management team member should review the employee's file and termination details in GHR to ensure the completeness and accuracy of documentation for terminations approved by another separate team member. Furthermore, we recommend implementing system controls that require the upload of all necessary documentation during the separation process. This would help mitigate the risk of incomplete document record retention, and that ultimately this be considered in the new system implementation as a needs requirement.
Just a question. As opposed to a sample of the records, and we're saying there were 2,000 or so terminations last year, have you given thoughts to looking at the entire population and looking for anomalies across that, and then you can target specific areas? If you overlay that to where we talked about where the greatest risks are for data breach or the greatest risks are for safety, that way you can sort of target based on the trending you see on the termination across the 2,000 and go to specific places instead of a sort of a hit or miss approach with sampling. Because the other thing is, and I hate to get into this, but the sample isn't really statistically accurate of 25 over 2,000 terminations. So just something to think about. If there's a way to, as you get the data aligned and talk about the IT related issues, if you can find a way to look at the entire population of terminations, certain things will stick out and you can target those as part of a review. Just a thought.
What would have been
Yeah.
a more comfortable sample size? I'm just curious. I said, what would have been, I mean, I'm just curious.
Well, it's funny, historically, from the audit perspective, you do a statistical sample. You say, oh, it should be 50, 60, 70%, however you calculate it,
Okay.
the sample. But,
More than 10%.
we're in a world now, for where I am, we're in a world now where we try to look at the entire population,
Because it's a little easier to
look
crunch
at the
the
trends,
data.
and then target the trouble spots instead of,
I like that. So you look at it all to identify where, is there a particular level or a trend? Is there a trend?
Exactly.
And then we would go deeper.
and you would deep dive into those anomalies and those trends. Now, mind you, that is extremely reliable on the quality of your data. And I'm pretty sure that is an issue. I mean, Plant Moran has spoken to that a couple of times now. But if we can get better data quality, then you'd be able to do that analysis and put in a mechanism where you just don't look at the sample, you can spot check. In a given quarter, if 500 people are terminated, you can look at that 500 people over that quarter and target specific areas. I think it's a better use of the time.
Yeah, I mean, not to go down the rabbit hole, but if there were audit logs available from IT, you could just cross-reference the names and look at the timing of the whole population. And so that's one of the blind spots of not having the logs. But there's various reasons for not turning on the log functions. I'm not sure why in this case, but just FYI in terms of, I guess the point here is when auditors walk in, the less procedures and data is available, the less meaningful the audit results can be. That's what we're trying to convey here. So the accuracy of the results become more subjective, right? Because we can't quantify and qualify better X result if we don't have more data per se that's been analyzed, just in this general context,
Understood, and great feedback. And we will have all this data soon. So the next time this happens, they're going to be able to pull all types of data and information. And it could probably do all 2,000 very easily versus a sample. But I see Patrina has her microphone
So
on.
I would like to clarify with the log. Jared, would you like to come up and explain the Microsoft limitation with the log, just to put it in a little better context for us, and then talk about the plan going forward. We have Jared Smith and Aaliyah Henderson Rosser from IT.
Oh. Can you hear me okay now? Okay, great. So we do keep the logs. There are several issues. Some of the logs have been overwritten by this point because it was going back to 2023, and we just don't have the retention for all of the Active Directory logs, all of the firewall logs, all of the securely logs, all of the AP logs to go back that far. Also, some of the dates in Active Directory are dependent on access time, not necessarily the disable time. So we have a workaround to put that time in another field, but if you access it after the fact, say there's a lawsuit, we have to go in and do e-discovery, or somebody comes back, that changes the last access. And so the data gets a little off. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Thank you. Matt, were you done with the presentation, or is there more?
So one last thing I just did want to address, sampling. So we did not employ random sampling. We did apply a judgmental sample selection to try to get good coverage across multiple employee classes. That's a typical practice for us for a first time audit. And then as far as expanding sample sizes, would certainly be supportive of expanding sample sizes for a follow-on audit once management and administration have had the opportunity to consider and implement enhancements to the system, including but not limited to any audit log retention, procedure enhancements, and any technology enhancements for the process as a whole that would support using automation tools to assess a larger portion of the population. So I think these are excellent insights, excellent thoughts. Some did apply to this first time audit. Others we'd recommend for the follow on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that does conclude our summary of opportunities and best practices. I'm happy to address any additional questions or comments, Ms. Bloodworth.
This is an eager crew. I think we gave them all to you during the presentation. I am looking at the dais, and I think we're good. I think all hearts and minds are clear. We appreciate you.
Thank you. And one correction, I forgot to thank the safety and security team. Thank you so much. Sorry about that. They do. Next up, we'll have CRI advisors. Can we go back to the main? Yes, thank you. Next one, that one, yes, thanks. So next we'll have CRI advisors presenting on the miscellaneous cash activity account funds, or in other words, our school audits. Thank you to Accounting Services for our continued meetings and support, as well as the Department of Schools in this audit. I will turn it
Okay.
over to Natalie or Yvonne to present.
Thank you, everybody. I have Natalie with me today. And I'm Yvonne Claiborne. I'm a partner with Carter Riggs and Ingram and CRI Advisors. And I am the partner in charge of this audit project, internal audit project. With me today is Natalie Wallace. She's a manager with our firm, and she led the team and assisted me in getting this process completed. We're going to provide you with just kind of a high level snapshot of the audit report. I'm sorry, my air conditioner just clicked on, so I apologize if there's background noise. I believe you have your IT is going to bring up a copy of the report. Is that
Yes.
ready?
Oops. Sorry for being so loud. Yes, it's being pulled up
Be up
now.
there now.
Hmm.
Okay.
And this
Okay.
is the summarized report, correct?
Yes, this is a summarized report.
Okay. Thank you.
And I am pulling up a copy of the report myself.
Can I ask a background contextual question?
Did it
on
come up? Okay, yep, I see it.
quickly?
Yes. Give us 1 second. We have a question.
Okay.
Please remind me from the prior years, in the overview, where we say in accordance with Georgia Department of Education, financial management of Georgia, blah, 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 where it says an annual audit. I know we talked about this before, but is it a state requirement or is it just a school board requirement that it's audited annually? Just going into this audit, what?
I'm going to need to consult legal counsel or Patrina for the answer to that one.
Can you please repeat your question?
Yeah, so the short question is, this audit, is it required by law or required by board policy?
It's really not required by either. It's really required as part of the audit plan that this audit committee adopted several years ago. The only audit required by law is that annual district-wide audit every school district has to do.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. Thanks for letting me ask that.
And again, this is why we have Earl and Brian here with us. They keep us on track and honest and ask great questions. Okay, we're going to send it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. This is the audit report covering the fiscal year ended June 30, 2024. And yes, that is correct, in terms of the date. So the transactions that we were auditing were coming from that time frame. And as we noted in the presentation last year, we were aware that we anticipated that some of these findings or most of these findings would be repeated in this audit report based on the timing of the district's ability to update the training and the guidance that was being provided. The compliance that we tested was with the district's policies and procedures manuals as well as state law. So the policies and procedures themselves have not changed. It's just been some time since the district has provided for these annual audits. And so there has been some, maybe some lack of communication within the schools. I'm not sure, how arrived at that. But again, this was the second year that we provided for this annual report, and the scope was the internal accounts activity or the internal funds activity, miscellaneous cash activity at the various schools. If you could advance to page page 7 of the PDF, please. Okay. Keep going couple more pages. It's 7 of the PDF. I apologize. So keep going. I'm sorry, I'm back to page 4 of the report. It's page 7 of the PDF, going the other direction. There you go. All right. So again, we visited all 61 schools this year. There was one school that we were unable to audit due to the missing records and some issues at that school. So so we audited 61 schools. All of the statistics are based on the 61 schools that we visited. All of the findings, with the exceptions of 7, 8, and 10, are repeated from the prior year. Observation number 4 is partially repeated and partially new. Observation 7 and 8 are completely new. And then observation number 10 was a verbal comment to the district in the prior year and is a written comment this year. This is not all of the items that we noted during the audit process. They rise to the level of being communicated in the report once we see 20% of the sampled transaction with a compliance issue noted, then we elevate it to the written portion of the report. Overall, we're recommending at the school level that there's regular reinforcement at the different schools and that there's ongoing support and supervision of the bookkeepers and the secretaries, that there's monitoring and evaluation of the systems, and that there's a feedback loop where the bookkeepers and the secretaries and other employees can voice concerns and provide for participation in recommendations for improvements, particularly as it relates to segregation of duties at some of the smaller schools where there is just not the numbers for staffing that would provide for complete segregation of duties. At the district level, we're recommending principal training as in addition to the bookkeeper and secretary training that's already taking place, ongoing communications with accounting services, and some enhancements to the training sessions that are currently being provided. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Natalie to go over some more specifics.
Thanks so much, Yvonne. As you guys can notice on the page displayed here, there's 11 findings listed. And just to reiterate again what Yvonne said before, that these are not all of them. These are only the findings that came across in 20% or more of the schools while we were conducting the audit here. So to begin with, we're going to start with the high-risk observations. The first one is the outdated procedures manual. It has not been updated since 2018, and the schools appear to be operating based on informal guidance or some outdated instructions that isn't necessarily consistent with the policies and procedures manual as written. So the system-wide inconsistencies are a root cause contributing to quite a few of these observations here. So they kind of build upon this first one. The second one relates to the segregation of duties, where 61% of schools had cases where the same person was collecting and recording of the funds. And this is an increase of risk or misappropriation, especially in schools like elementary schools, like we previously mentioned, that may have some limited staff. The third one here relates to the sponsors' training and documentation of that training. Over 3/4 of the schools did not have that required sponsor training documentation or the signed agreements. So if the training is occurring, they may just not be documenting it appropriately, but it is important to note that this inadequate documentation of training increases the risk of potential for improper collections, loss of funds, or non-compliant activities handling. The next one is missing support documentation. And this is where 72% of schools had receipts that were missing the necessary support or backup. So without this documentation, at times we are unable to verify completeness or appropriateness of those collections. And in addition to that, it also kind of relates to the next one here with the restricted donations and grant awards accounts. If there are donations that are remitted, the intent of the donation, sometimes that support was also not provided, which can lead to utilizing those donations for unallowable purposes. and not having the documentation behind what the donations were for and deeming them as restricted. So this next finding builds upon having those items in the donation funds commingled instead of segregated out to determine which ones are appropriately restricted and or for general use. With the next one, disbursement for pre-authorization issues, this is about 40% where the forms weren't approved, and then another 49% where the approval was done after the purchase. Most of the time when we inquired with the individual schools, they weren't aware of certain accounting services approvals being needed for large purposes that need to go through the procurement process, like telephone quotes, email quotes, or full procurement with formal bids. The next high is the timeliness of remitting of the funds. This is where 30% were not turning in the funds daily or the next business day if they were collected at an evening or afternoon event to the bookkeeper. And obviously here, this risks deposit delays and loss of funds for the district as a whole. The next one we're going to go into is going into our moderate level risk observations. The first one relates to training. As we had mentioned before, there are training materials on the SharePoints that relate to this outdated manual. However, a lot of those trainings and manuals just aren't aligned with common practice like we mentioned earlier. So again, updating the training to not only be reflective of the appropriate policies and procedures, but also just the effectiveness of the training with the clear objectives and engaging bookkeepers and keeping principals also in the loop and accountable for this training and their reactions to the training. The next one is the unclaimed property. This is the one that was verbal in the previous year, but we warranted that it's necessary to be written since there were 77% of the schools that had instances in where checks in excess of 5 years old were not cash or remitted to the state per the state laws. Then the last finding is a low rating of a finding here. So checks that are being received by mail didn't have any controls or requiring a mail log or anything like that. So that one was also a repeat from the prior years we had mentioned before, but it could still contribute to systemic risk and should still be remediated. So again, just overarching recommendations here on a school-wide basis, just increasing consistency of training and the efficacy of training across all staff involved, strengthening those segregation of duties, or adopting mitigating controls in those small staff schools like the elementary schools, improving documentation practices, timely funding, handoffs between those sponsors and the bookkeepers, and reinforcing those quarterly financial compliance meetings using that principal checklist that management had notated in their management response here. At the district level, prioritizing that updated manual, standardizing and centralizing those training materials, ensuring that they do follow the policies and procedurals manual as well as the state recommendations and laws, enhancing communications from accounting services through the schools via checklists, reminders, memos, and then expanding monitoring and accountability mechanisms through the associate superintendents as mentioned in the management responses on the subsequent pages within our report. So in summary here, the audit identified a significant number of recurring observations that largely stem from that outdated guidance, inconsistencies and limitations with staffing at the schools. The district responses are included within the report that again include trainings being updated, manuals being updated, as well as enhanced monitoring to strengthen that compliance moving forward. And again, as always, we appreciate the cooperation of the internal compliance team, school administrators, and accounting services with, all of the effort and due diligence put into this audit and the subsequent vetting and relaying of the report. So with that, I'm sure you guys have some questions that you wanted to ask, and we'd be happy to address them at this time.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. Before we continue, I want to do a quick time check. I didn't notice that this meeting was only scheduled for an hour. We're going to need probably another 20, 30 minutes to get through this. Is everyone okay continuing and going over so we can properly handle this business? Okay, so we will continue, and I want to acknowledge that there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of moving parts in this, and it's tricky that we're looking at this audit before remediations would have been made. I also want to acknowledge another tricky thing is the fact that there's a lot of turnover in this space as well. Lot of opportunity, clearly a lot of opportunity. I'm not downplaying this, right? Just adding a little context. And after we ask our questions, I also want Patrina to take a moment and share about a recent training that she has done with folks that kind of addresses this, but then also ask for us to consider how we do this moving forward, because I don't want us to just do this to get red or yellow or green. I want to do this with the intent of improving. And so I want to make sure that we're giving the space and the grace for people to make those improvements and for it to show in their actions. And I'm going to I'll save my questions until after everyone else has asked theirs. So, Board Member Howard.
Yes, thank you for that. My question right now, I know miscellaneous funds clearly, but what types of funds? I mean, is this PTA funds? Is this, paying for like a family dance? Is this graduation fees? Like, for instance, my kids are in high school in APS, and everything that we have to pay for is through school bucks. It's you have to do it online. Obviously, the school's not taking cash. There is a receipt system. I also understand that we don't want to put any barriers and creating barriers for people trying to attend a dance or a child paying for a bake sale. So I'm just trying to understand, to the extent we can cover it right now, kind of what we're looking at. The types of funds that we're talking about.
Regina, would you like us to respond, or would you like to respond?
I'll let accounting services is at the DIOSC. I'll let them respond.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? These are funds collected by students or parents. So to your point, yes, these are not general funds or federal funds. They are small grants. Large grants have to be sent to the central office, and we maintain those in special revenue accounts. So this may be like Coca-Cola's paying for a field trip, or they're having a school dance. So these are the guidelines and things put in place to handle miscellaneous activities, from dues and fees for different activities, or from parents. Yes, but not PTA. PTA is a separate entity, and they have to have their own board and their own finances.
That's a great point of clarification. For instance, if PTA has a bake sale at the school to raise money, but then they're giving that money maybe for an event at a school, like to Board Member Baldwin's point, there's so many moving parts here. So again, this is just putting a flashlight on what's happening, so we know where there is automation and where there might be opportunity, and making sure that proper training's in place, so there's that point person at the school who understands well. But I am glad we have more systems now in place, because when I see missing receipt, there shouldn't be a missing receipt for like graduation fees and bigger athletic events or whatever it is. So I'm looking forward to hearing how we're ensuring that people are using those systems, because we have them in place and clearly we pay for them.
We currently have about 60% of our schools, because it's been a big push out for us to use online school payments. And we are aware that we do hear a lot about demographics from some of the schools. But the pandemic taught us that everybody can have access to cards now, so we've really been pushing it out. So we asked that they put all activities, regardless of how parents can pay, on online school payments. And we, this is from 2024, but we have about 60% of our schools actually utilizing, especially for any large amount activities that they have. The only thing that, maybe a parent doesn't want to pay for a dance or, so for things like that, that may be $2 or $3, but everything else we are asking for the requirement to have to go on online school payments. And we have about 60% of our schools who are not, we don't want to say cashless because we don't, all parents we will accept, but we have about 60% of our schools that are currently using online school payments for all activities.
And I really appreciate y'all lifting up. We want to make sure that people have every opportunity to pay for things the way they can. But if there is a way, like we're talking about right here, like what is the barrier to make sure we, have the most secure system in place that also protects that person receiving those funds, how we go forward knowing that we have the technology we do today. So looking forward to seeing what comes out of this, knowing what the issues are too. So thank you for all that explanation. It's very helpful.
Can you cite what is the barrier for the 39 or 40% that aren't doing it?
We get some feedback from schools that feel that their demographic, so they don't push it as much as we've liked it to be pushed. But we have been working with the instruction team now and the Associate Soup's office to give us some more guidance on how to get those things pushed out into the schools a little better.
Okay, Tolton, Board Member Pace.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just wanted to ask, and apologies if I missed this somewhere, but maybe a quick education moment for me. What does our training look like currently, and as quickly or condensed as you could share, for like principals, secretaries, bookkeepers? And I'm thinking about that from the standpoint of, what was shared today, but also my mom was actually a secretary / bookkeeper before we had separate roles in APS. And I remember just the lack of standardization of processes and procedures, right? It varied from school to school, then principal to principal. So just curious as to what that looks like now, and then kind of forecasting where we're going.
Summer, we have a summer finance academy where we have all the secretaries out. We teach them separately from the principals, and we just do a big finance academy. They learn everything from requisitions to POs to accounts payables all at one time. It's a whole half a day maybe. And then we also offer a separate P card and travel card training. And then we offer specifically for our bookkeepers and secretaries a separate SABO training.
So SABO is what we call this system that's being audited, those guidelines and procedures. So usually I have two formal trainings where we pull them away from school. We try not to pull them away as much as possible, but there are two formal trainings where they are pulled away from schools. So that's leadership, which is now business managers. Most schools have business managers. So principals who may not come, they have a finance person. So we ask for business managers, bookkeepers, and secretaries all to come to the training. We've asked for it to be mandatory in the last 2 years. And then we also work with the Associate Soup's office to put all of these new things into the principal's checklist. So principals also have a list that we came up with. I think this is the second year rollout of a checklist so that when they meet with their bookkeepers and secretaries, they know what to ask for. So it's specifically, did you give me these receipts? Have I signed this? Have this? So we, for the past 2 years, we've given a checklist, and we try to update that checklist, in the summertime, depending on what feedback we get back. We also have teams meetings with our vendors so that the vendors can talk directly to the school secretaries or their finance team if they have problems with our system, or if they have problems with our vendors like Loomis, for pickups and things like that. So the other meetings that we have, we try to have them doing extended learning days so that they won't be pulled away from. So currently, I think we've had 4 meetings this fiscal year.
And we also offer the one-on-one with the new secretaries, if anybody has.
All new secretaries and principals receive a one-on-one in-person training.
Excellent. And just a quick follow-up, I'm sorry. So for the new folks who come in, you kind of get that one-on-one. Is there any type of, mentoring of sorts that might happen with, say, a veteran, principal, secretary, what have you, with the new person who may be coming in to further, fortify that learning?
So we're speaking for Associate Soup's office also to the things that they've mentioned to us, but their admin team also, who is mostly made up of admins from schools, have been coming up with a type of mentorship to actually give some partnership to the school secretaries.
Thank you for that question, Board Member Pace, because I was sitting here thinking, is there a resource that may not be a person that when you're in the midst of doing something and you're like, oh, I forgot step 6, is there a quick resource that they can tap into for that guidance, whether it be a person or a document?
And we have a dedicated accountant just for school-based accounting and finances. So we have an email address for support, and 3 members of our team, including myself, we all see that, so the questions are answered timely, and we have a dedicated person that is just reconciling and looking at the SABO accounts.
So in the situation where you had schools that had no documentation, I don't need you to put them on blast, but my understanding is there is at least one repeat offender. What are we doing to remediate and help those folks? Like, and
Katrina spoke with.
So we won't put them on blast, but anytime there's a change in people, processes, or technology, things will fall through the cracks. And typically, one thing that I think y'all forgot to mention, there's also a finance manual. So that's the basis.
And that's the one that hasn't been updated though, right?
The finance, the student activity funds part has been updated.
Okay.
The finance manual and the whole has, but that section for the school.
General Counsel Gupta, can we make it a point to highlight this with the policy committee, that this is a priority of something that needs to be reviewed as a recommendation from the audit committee?
Absolutely, and we'll send that message to our finance department as well.
Okay, and if you could work with Patrina and all the good stuff that you need to include with that, and whoever the next audit chair is. Now I'm going to look over here to my experts.
Clarification question on the part that has been updated. Can you say that part one more time?
The section for the school that they use, that section has been updated.
Great. And was that updated in context of, it's highlighted in the report under observation number 1, for example, the School Cash Online app or the admission events app, like those electronic processes?
Not for this audit, for 2024.
Okay. All right.
And I would also like to add, as Loretta mentioned earlier, I have, I call it the campaign trail. So in my quest to, meet new leadership and talk about risk, I've also conducted some training sessions with associate superintendents, as well as, cluster superintendents, as well as the CLL administrative support team that supports the schools, to educate them about a lot of the high risk things that we're seeing in these audits, as well as what internal audit is, what we do, what we don't do. And yeah, it's been well received, and then from time to time, I have informal conversations. People just ask me, "What do you do? What does your department do?" So I think it's, in the past, typically these issues have been mainly accountable in the accounting department. And so I feel like with this year, what's different with the plan this year is that we've got more involvement with the school, from the schools, working together, and the new plans along with this new system should help significantly decrease these issues.
So what I'm hearing on that tail end is the principals should actually feel like they're responsible for this, as opposed to thinking that's another department's job, that's someone else's job. Okay, I see some faces, so I'm gonna go to my experts and listen to what they have to say.
Yeah, my chest hurts. I don't even know where to start. First of all, thank you everyone who has contributed supporting this effort. One of the first questions that was posed was, well, what were the funds? And we were like, well, these aren't federal funds and they're small funds. It's not small. If your collections has been almost $5.1 million and your disbursements has been greater than the collections, which that's a whole nother question that I have. How are you giving out more than you're bringing in? That's a whole nother financial question. But, for me, I'm a big fan of education. I'm a big fan of training, and that's beautiful. But you have heard me say this before on calls, and I've said in meetings, and I've said this time and time again. Training is not a control. And so you can do all the training and one-on-ones and mentoring, but you need a control to put in place. So if you told me, and I get it, I don't work for the school, but if you told me that the best way for me to use the funds that were raised or contributed to my school is going to be driven by the fact that I use the proper vehicles and mechanisms, not 60% of the time, not 70% of the time, but 100% of the time, and I had to do that in order to have access to the funds, then I should do that. If my employer now told me, you know what, Earl, we don't want to send your money to Bank of America, you need to get an account at Chase, then I'm opening an account at Chase to receive my pay. I think what I still fundamentally feel for what I've read through all of this is the accountability and responsibility. I don't think we need to do this audit again next year. Again, you're going to be auditing the problems you already know. So use the time and the resources. Don't turn a blind eye, and don't tell the people who have been audited the last 2 years they're not going to be audited.
Right. They're really not.
But target and take a look and get time to put the controls. Otherwise, you are going to continue to perform audit over a broken system, and you need time to fix that. But this is disturbing, and I think in order for you all to do this, I think you need more data points. These decisions and steps need to be data-driven and not just based on how I feel or what we think the students need. So when you give me a statistic about the use of the school cash online or the lack of use of it, whichever one it is, it'd be helpful for me to have the context and helpful for you all to have the context of, well, what was the cash affiliated with using or not using that process, and how much is at risk? Because without that, you don't really know. Is it 1% of 5 million or is it 35%? You need that data to be able to draft the proper plan and then put the controls in and implement them. You need to drive accountability. You should not be able to disperse funds if you have not accurately accounted and proven how you received the funds. How does that happen? And what y'all hear, and maybe you don't know that, and some gonna learn online. I'm so passionate about this because I'm the guy that testified against the last few people in the cheating scandal, for those who did not know that. I worked on that investigation. That is why I sit at this table. So I'm not gonna allow us to sit here and take this lightly. These percentages are deplorable, and I think you need more data to be able to drive and come up with the right decisions. The last thing I'll say, because I could keep going on and on, is the question that was raised about the funds and which funds are restricted or not restricted. So now you have a legal issue. Because if you have taken some funds that were restricted for something else, for one thing, and it's used for something else, I, as the donor, am now in position to raise legal action because my funds were not used. And do you want that on the cover of the newspaper? And do you want a contributor to come back and say, I want my funds back? This needs a lot of work, and I think it needs a lot more data in order for the school to take the proper actions to correct.
So just adding to that, so in context of data, the interesting points about like school cash online and admission events, you know, from a solutioning standpoint, I think that, you know, yeah, the software approach is the way to go. And I don't know within APS why it can't be mandated that we're adopting a standard. But before we adopt that standard, let's assess it to see if it meets the needs of policy or vice versa, right? Can the systems mitigate or eliminate risks that are associated with all the manual pieces, right? So we're living in two worlds. We're living in pre-COVID versus post-COVID. So it's like 60% of the schools might be in post-COVID and then the rest in pre-COVID. Let's just pretend for a minute that, okay, it's mandated 100% use, but then for sensitivities and needs, the student population can't utilize those systems. Fair enough. Well, they get to do the old manual way, and they got to be compliant to that, right? Which is not the best scenario because you got two processes, two policies. But the point is like, where's the overall assessment, the mandate, the standardization? Because my personal opinion is no work should be done on any remediation efforts until those strategic questions are asked and a plan is put in place. And if audit is asked to do anything, it's to now review school cash online and admission events and any other app-based financial system that is used, drill down on that and collect information. Would be a value-added activity because of the at least a 60% adoption level, right? So that'd be my vote to do that in lieu of this until all those big picture things are decided. But
we have all head nods over here from the voting members of the audit committee to move in that direction and truly understanding where the opportunity is, as well as updating the policy that will help guide this. And I would love, I think we have agreement to ask you, Patrina, in looking at this current plan that we have, to take what it was, the miscellaneous CAS audit, and to replace it with this work.
Yeah, I agree.
And I would also like to ask the two of our experts on the committee to be available for some feedback in the drafting and creation of this policy. And then I have to say thank you, and thank you for what you all bring to this work. You don't have to do it, and you do it, and you bring your whole self here, and we would not be complete without you. And I want to let you know that you all are appreciated, and I hope that you will continue in this work, especially since we may see some turnover on this committee. And so your institutional knowledge is going to be that much more important in order to help us get this right.
thank you. And it is interesting the time that has passed and what we've had the privilege of seeing, really. And I think that's why we're becoming a little bit more passionate, because we're like, hey, we want to see progress. You know, we don't want to sit here and just provide a little opinion here and there or ask a little technical question here and there. You know, we support this whole process here. You know, so.
Yeah, and we understand that these things actually contribute to the cultural shift that we're trying to make. And that's not done with debits and credits. You know, it takes more of it. So happy to do that. I just want to clarify, I just want to defer the annual audit. So let's not, let's just make sure we don't lose that, because.
Did y'all hear that in the public? We're still gonna be looking.
We just want to defer it.
You just don't know when.
Loretta, if I may, I want to double click on what Brian was saying, and obviously Earl too, about just like clear procedures, expectations as a part of updating the policy. Obviously, it's on the superintendent and team around how this is implemented, and really making sure that that's really clear, and that we get feedback on how that's developing, and that clear communication with him. Going back to accountability, I completely agree, Earl. I mean, all this adds up to a lot. And the main point you brought up, that there's more going out than coming in, I mean, I know we're on top of this, but it is very important. All this is important. And appreciate y'all's institutional knowledge to have seen the audit in the past too. Well, more than once. And couldn't agree more that we need to work on how we address this and then go back and check.
Yeah, and if I may, being a parent of kids in APS, I mean, I've experienced these, I've used these, and I see the heroic efforts of our educators and administrative staff every day. So I want to put that on the table so that any color commentary from us, so to speak, it's like, it's always without appreciation, knowing that, you know, so many people who aren't here that do that work, you know, it's because they're serving the kids, per se, you know, or they're fighting so many fires and they got so many things to handle. So that context is always on the table.
And to take away the risk on them, like, it's not fair, to everyone's point, like, we don't want to put someone in a difficult position, and that's what y'all are focused on doing. But we know we have all these opportunities now with technology, and it's just been a matter of a lot of different things. So that's what we're here to support. So certainly want to continue to communicate that, because we know it's not intentional at all. It's
Right.
just a matter of what is that going to be, and us really sticking to it and having the accountability and having the right support. So thank goodness for Audit to
Well,
keep
I
shining
want to
light.
say thank
We're here to
you
help.
to Patrina for, in the last few months, trying to get where some of the process improvements actually need to take place, and that's helping to align some of the things. I currently have 2 scholars at APS schools also, so this means a lot to me. So if there's an activity going home and you see something, you know, my kids come home with a form, the first thing I do is pick up my phone and I'm calling the school saying, hey, why do I have a form? So I do understand, and I am, you know, we're working hard to make sure that, you know, we're streamlining these things, and I think we are moving in the right direction.
Thank you.
So I just had a flashback in that we have actually made some progress and done some good work, even to the point of we have a system that now lets us know where we are in our remediations. This has been an amazing too. Actually, I think I've been on this committee 4 years. Shoot, maybe 6. It's been a while, and this is what I am passionate about. So I am happy to have had the opportunity to serve in this space. Do we have any additional questions or comments around this audit? I'm going to be tuning in whenever it comes back around. I'm going to be right out there cheering y'all on, eager for the results. and the improvements.
Thank you.
We appreciate you. Mr. Wilborn, let's proceed with public comment. Do we have any stakeholders? Oh, I'm ready to go. My bad. We got one more section.
I'll try to get through it really fast. We got to talk through ethics point really quick.
Oh, forgot about that. That's important.
Can we go back to the main presentation? Thank you, CRI.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you.
All right, so I'll try to blow through this in the interest of time. So lastly, we have our ethics point discussion. So a little bit about our process is reporters can either call the hotline or complete a form online. NAVEX personnel record those complaints and enter those into the NAVEX ethics point system. An automatic notification is generated that sends an email to designated parties that a complaint has been filed. Our internal metric is that we try to give a response to the reporter within 48 hours, just to acknowledge so that they don't feel their report is being ignored. 90% of the cases that are referred, that we receive are referred out to other departments, Office of Employee Relations, Transportation, principals, cluster and superintendents, charter schools, and then we manage those complaints and the progress and resolution to make sure that they're addressed and close those cases out once resolved. About 10% of those complaints are actually investigated by the Office of Internal Compliance. And sometimes we receive partial reports, and in which case we may ask for more detail. If we don't receive those additional details, in roughly about a month or two, we'll go ahead and just close the case out and encourage them at a later date and time, if they have details, to refile the claim. And then we typically just try to update the reporter along the way. The first point is for about 48 hours after the complaint is filed to thank them for filing the report. Again, if there are any questions, we need more details. Sometimes they may ask for status and we respond to that. And then lastly, we respond again when the case is closed. This year, since I have taken over as executive director, actually going back a little bit past that. So when I onboarded in August, I reviewed the files and to determine like what cases were open, and so that took me back to April of 2025. So since April, we've had 92 total cases come through. About 30% of those were for employee relations. About another 30% were referred out to the schools. About 20% of those were complaints that just didn't have enough detail, could not be investigated. And then about 10% of those were for for our office. And then the remaining 10% were a combination of like transportation, safety and security. And so, yeah, that's kind of our total compilation. We've had, changes in our department, changes in HR as well. And so it's currently an ongoing process to reconcile what's been investigated already, what needs to be closed out, to make sure that every single case is addressed and resolved and closed. Any questions? All right. Well, thank you so much for your support. Firstly, to the audit committee. Thank you. Your support and guidance are appreciated. Tolton, as you roll off, I know we're just kind of like getting to know each other, and you're leaving. But hopefully I'll see your face at some point. And then Aretta, you're leaving as well. And you'll be missed. And thank you to our community advisors, Earl and Brian. I know, Brian, you'll still be here. Earl, I'm not sure if are you rolling off this?
Yeah, I feel like I extended, and I feel like I extended another year at least.
Okay. Okay. Cool. That's
I mean, I still live in Georgia, so yeah.
good to know. Good to know. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. That concludes my presentation.
Excellent, thank you. Madam General Counsel, is there a reason for us to retreat into executive session?
Madam Chair, there is not.
Excellent, excellent. So moving forward, now I can look over here and proceed with public comment. Mr. Wilburn, do we have any stakeholders? Among all these people that are in the room fighting for space, signed up for public comment.
Madam Chair, there are no public comment. There's no
Oh, I
public
guess
comment.
they just came to look at us. That's awesome. So I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Madam Chair, so moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Board Member Pace and seconded by Board Member Howard. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. We're adjourned.